There is growing concern as we end 2020 about why it is taking so long for the country to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. South Africa, we know, is in line to receive the COVID vaccine, but there's still no clarity on when it's going to land in the country. Monday, President Ramaphosa announcing that South Africa was set to receive the vaccine in the second quarter of 2021. I want to try and make some sense of this as I talk to Professor Barry Schoub, Chairperson of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 Vaccine Development. Professor, good afternoon to you and welcome. This has become an emotional issue. It's also becoming fast a political football. Tell us truthfully, have we dropped the ball here?
Jeremy, no, not at all. We have not dropped the ball. There are a lot of negotiations that are going on. There's a lot of intense activity to acquire vaccine over and above the COVAX allocation, the COVAX. Now, COVAX, as you remember, is the pooled procurement mechanism that really middle-income countries, about 189 countries around the world, have signed on to for an allocation of vaccine. That the President alluded to, as you just mentioned, will be coming either end of the first quarter or into the second quarter of next year. Now, obviously, all of us are very impatient, understandably so. We all want a vaccine as soon as possible. The problem that has arisen is that the high-income countries have pre-purchased vaccine on risk during the course of the year when vaccines were still undergoing trial. No vaccines had been licensed yet, and at that stage we didn't really know how effective and how safe those vaccines would be. So these countries have it's called vaccine nationalism, a new term, vaccine nationalism. They bought for their own countries, in fact, some cases 2 or 3, in one case even 5 times the amount that's required for the population. So this is 13% of the world's population bought about 51% of the vaccine production. So that means that the other countries, the middle-income countries, and of course we couldn't afford to do that at the stage of buying at risk because we didn't really know which vaccines would work, which vaccines would be safe. And if vaccines wouldn't work or they would be safe, wouldn't be safe, that would just be money which we wasted. And we couldn't afford, with our economy, to waste money like that.
So the tragedy of this, Professor Schoub, is we're simply being elbowed out by countries that have more money and perhaps were better prepared than us.
Well, I don't think you can say better prepared because they did buy on risk. They could afford to waste the money that we couldn't afford to waste. So we were preparing, but we didn't have the finance to buy at risk. And of course, there is a bit of an advantage that we've got because now more vaccines are coming online and we can evaluate which vaccines, and also we can see how the vaccines which already have been approved, how they're behaving in the field. Because field behavior doesn't necessarily totally equate to how these vaccines behave in a trial situation. So we do have one advantage that we can see which are the best vaccines for us and most suitable for our conditions. There is a disadvantage. Clearly, we want to get vaccine as soon as possible, and efforts are being made to try and get vaccine as soon as possible, certainly earlier than what we'll get from the COVAX allocation.
So, Professor Schoub, how do we determine then which are those best vaccines? And leading on from that then, what is the status of negotiation with vaccine suppliers beyond the COVAX pool?
Well, to decide which vaccines, we've got to first of all look at the trial data. How did they behave in the trials? And to look at the safety, to look at the efficacy. Then also information after the trial. We call that post-marketing surveillance. So we're getting information how it's behaving once it goes out into the general population. Because some things are being picked up now. For example, I'll give you one example. The Pfizer vaccine, which is probably one of the best vaccines and has been widely used in the Northern Hemisphere, they're now seeing that there are 10 times as many cases of severe allergic reaction. We call it anaphylaxis. That was not picked up in the trials. That's only picked up now once it gets into the field. So these are the kind of things which we are looking at. And also now there are vaccine manufacturers which weren't licensed before and now coming on to be licensed, and looking at their dossiers when they apply for registration, and looking at the holistic picture, the safety, the efficacy, the storage, the distribution, and of course the availability. Because, as I've mentioned before, a lot of it has already been pre-purchased.
How confident are you that it will be in the second quarter?
I think in the second quarter that we will have vaccine, very confident.
And why are we not running trials in this country?
No, we are. There are 4 vaccine trials which are being currently run in the country. The AstraZeneca, the Johnson & Johnson, the Pfizer, and the Novavax. These are 2 of them, there are 3 of them, in Johannesburg and 1 in Cape Town.
And what's the status of those trials internally?
Well, these are part of multinational trials. They're not only in South Africa, and the results get published multinationally. So, of course, Pfizer has published their results, and AstraZeneca have published their results. The other 2 have not published as yet. The AstraZeneca, which is a very, very promising vaccine for us for a number of reasons, has shown very good safety record and good efficiency, and overall, and very importantly, can be stored at an ordinary refrigerator temperature, which is a big win for us.
Right. Professor, just a final question. You're confident then about April 2021. What about volume, though? Will we have enough?
Well, no, we will. It really, in all countries, it comes in 2 tranches. The first tranche is really for the high priority vaccination, people that are at the highest risk, particularly healthcare workers and so on. They get the first tranche of vaccine. For the rest of the country, that's going to come much later than April, or so not much later, but certainly after that first tranche. And that's the strategy all over the world. You immunize your high priority first for personal protection, then you immunize the rest of the population for universal protection for herd immunity.
Professor Barry Schoub, I thank you for the clarity. I appreciate your time.